So I'm going to show you selected works of CCBA, and they would be sort of three projects. I'll start with the Mahindra World College. The Mahindra United World College is set up about 20-25 kilometers from Pune. It's set up in the hills, and it's in a place called Mulchi. Mulchi is more or less famous for one of the large lakes there, and it's the area that you're seeing right now is completely forested, completely green. But when the site was first taken, it was selected by CCBA along with the client. So when we went to site and we sort of identified 3 or 4 different locations, and this one was finalized, it was a completely barren piece of ground, not one tree on it, just a few dead grasses. It was a completely different picture from what you are seeing now. Uh, all the plantation, all the trees are either being set up by during the design phase, or the college has sort of nurtured and created a bioreserve there. If you see it from site, you're seeing actually 2 different parcels to it. The one that is closer to the right hand bottom of the screen is the residential areas, which we called vadas. And these vadas are essentially small clusters. Typically, Pune traditional housings were called vadas. So you enter a large courtyard and you have these 3-4 small houses opening into it. And the design was on the same lines. In the center of the screen is what you are seeing primarily as the academic complex and the other buildings around it. So there are these 2 complex, distinct areas of the site linked by pathways. And it was a very difficult thing because we had to complete this entire project in 15 months from design to execution. And the language that we wanted to use here was local stone. And getting 500 masons of stone, even in 1995, was very difficult. Forget getting them in Mulchi, it was difficult getting 500 masons for stonework in whole of Pune. So there were 2 or 3 contractors taken for this, and this was sort of developed. What I'm showing you now is a little bit a zoom in of the academic area. If you see here, the language looks very sort of distorted or broken up, but it's not. Each room, each corner has got its own meaning, and it is used perfectly. There's no negative space in any of these corners that you're seeing. If you see the top center part of it, there's a gate there, which is essentially like a Mahadwara. That Mahadwara leads one down an axis, which sort of comes flanked by the academic buildings, by the library buildings, into the central courtyard with those 4 tiled roofs buildings around it, which are essentially the academic classrooms. Each classroom has got its own courtyard beyond it. So if you see around that classroom, there are this external space where you can spill out, and there is this walled courtyard. So most of the time of the year in Pune, around 9 months, you can use the outdoors very well. Only in April or early mornings in January, it sort of becomes cool, but April's is hot and October is a little hot, but most of the other times of the year you can use it. So these courtyards were an integral part of the design, linked into it. The various buildings on the sides were either the art center, the library. Each one had its distinct shape, distinct form, and each one responded to its function. The notable thing about this is drawings were being done in office. We had drafting at that time. There was no computers. They were being blueprinted, and someone from the office would go and deliver in the evening to site. And next day morning, construction would start on them. So there was a lot of I would say there was a very lively atmosphere when all of this was being done. There were about 20 architects working on this project, all young people working on it. Unfortunately, I wasn't there in the beginning of the project. I came just when the project was getting completed. But from seniors in office, what I've come to know is this was how a studio essentially functions. And that is what imbibed in me until today, what Christopher, as well as all the seniors, and what I also sort of insist on is having the studio atmosphere, where we sort of have a limited amount of architects working in the studio, but you know what each and every one of them is doing. You know each and every one by name. You can talk with them at any time. We feel like, so it's a very different atmosphere, and that is what architecture is going to lead to. It's going to lead to a lot of uh, learning, but with fun. It's not a boring 9 to 5 job. It is a 24 by 7, 365 days a week job, and it's a fun job. So that's how we sort of have to, even this project that we're going to do with having all these elements sort of put into it. So I'll just take you down onto the plan. I'll zoom into the two different parts. The left hand side is the academic area, but the right hand is the residential area, the one that we saw in the aerial view. That aerial view was taken about 3 years ago. So that is how the college has completely got densified. So I'll lead you down the passage, sort of the movement corridor that you as a visitor would come into this campus. You have this drop off at one place where you have the Mahadwara. From the Mahadwara, you are linked down. When you're walking down the street of the Mahadwara, on your right hand side would be the administration building. There were only about 5 or 6 offices required, one conference room, and 2 or 3 open staff sitting in that. On your left hand side would be the security and the IT room. IT at that time was just basically large IBM computers with each one taking say 2 feet by 2 feet space with box screens into it. So it was in its infancy. And today the campus is completely Wi-Fi with touch screen everywhere. So that is how the campus sort of has to grow. It has been both positive and negative in that way because we've used stone. And with stone walls, you have to have a complete outlook on what the final picture is going to be. So the language we used was the stone walls on the outside, and we got brick facing walls on the inside, which can be plastered and adapted to whatever use has to be done. So the language was very progressive in a sort of a way to adapt to what is unthinkable at that time. 25 years ago, no one would have thought of people using smartphones or even what Wi-Fi would be there, or mobile phone technology also wasn't there at that time. There were pages around that, when it was being designed. So the institute has sort of seen all of this in its short life of 20 years and gone ahead. Uh, the building that now zooming into is the science center. This was the first building started on site. So what you're seeing is a very different language in it. If you see the sharp angles are sort of muted in this, because this is the building where when Christopher was designing, he said, okay, let me start breaking it up into different areas. So most of the rooms were still the normal rectangular rooms. There were 2 laboratories on the corners with a common lab assistant room with a storeroom in the at the corners, and the central was a large courtyard, open to sky, sort of passages leading all around, and you enter also from a small courtyard with a small opening. So the hierarchy of spaces was also maintained in this. You come from a large opening, you come through a narrow door, and then there's this large green courtyard around you before you disperse to all your functions. The next building I'm going to take you to is the center of any institution. In this case, the academic building. So the academics is the brain of the institute, and this would be this building was also the brain of the institute. It lies on the axis leading down from the Mahadwara, past the administration building. You come bang into the center of the courtyard of the academic buildings. If you see, there's a small wall there, a feature wall there. Now that sort of breaks your vision. The feature wall is in the center of the courtyard. That breaks your vision down the axis, and it disperses your vision around the periphery. The classrooms are of different shapes, different sizes, different accesses were created. The open spaces were large in some classrooms, they were smaller in some classrooms. The strength of a class at that time was supposed to be 20 students, and the total strength of the institute was 200 students. Today, there are over 800 students into it, and they want to go into 1,000 plus students. So there is a paucity of space there. From the central academic, you sort of branch out into various areas. These buildings on the right with these staggered forms were the toilet blocks. None of the buildings had toilets inside them. They were these pulled out structures with sort of gazebos in the landscape. reflecting the topology of the hills behind, and they were pulled out and made function. So it helped in the ease of functioning of the institute also, as well as maintenance became easy for these toilets. Um, the building on the left is the library. The library has got this courtyard which sort of is enveloped by this entire areas of shelves of books and seating carrels. Uh, if you see, the angles of the library are used in all the areas. There is no negative space as such anywhere. Either it's been created into a window to give diffuse light, or it's a double heights clear story window, or it's the entrance foyer. But there is no negative space in any of these buildings. This building is the art center here. Again, free flowing. It had got large verandas, about 20 feet covered, double height spaces, mezzanines. It was essentially a building for a person to explore their creativities, and hence the building wasn't following any set pattern. Uh, and you will be facing with that question whenever you are sort of doing your design also. Uh, you'll be asked form follows function or function follows form. It's neither. It's the way you program it. In the end, the function has to be followed. That's a given. And the form has to be interesting. And that is what your job is, to take the function and make it into a form. If it's only function, you would be called engineers and not architects. As an architect, it is you who would have to sort of amalgamate a peaceful marriage between function and form, and see that form doesn't get subdued by function. The building here is the multipurpose hall. Now, in this entire complex, there was no air conditioning. It was just double height volumes, the thick stone walls, which had these cooling effect, and no need for air conditioning these classes. There is the first thing people start doing today is air conditioning your institute, so that there is no, you don't have to think about light or ventilation or any of these issues. You can design however you want and justify it by saying there is air conditioning. But here, when we designed this, there was no escape for us. We had to look at cross ventilation, natural lighting, except in this building where the requirement came from the institute that when the students would be taking an exam, the exam would be held all across the world at approximately the same timing. And the students would be sitting in this large hall, and the temperature of the hall would have to be controlled at 24 or 25 degrees, irrespective of whichever place in the world you are at. And hence, this room was air conditioned. The four towers at the corners that you see are essentially the air conditioning units. So now go to the academic, the residential areas. As I mentioned earlier, the residential areas were designed more as vadas, all sprung around various courtyards, and it was completely set back from the main academic areas. So you would have to come down pathways. There are numerous pathways by which you can come down. Now each one of them is heavily forested, and each one would be a pleasure to walk at any time of the day or night. The building here in the center is essentially the student center. You got these different activity rooms, each one with a function, and given to various student organizations. There was a swimming pool there. Also, at that time, it was very essential. Space for a helipad had to be created adjacent to this, so that the dignitaries could sort of come at various times to the via helicopter, because the road from Pune was quite long. So this was the student center, and around surrounding this were either faculty houses or these student centers with essentially designed as vadas. I'll just take you into one of them and show you how it would be sort of detailed out. There'd be sets of double sets of rooms with toilets, common toilets, all over one courtyard. So you'd enter into one space. You'd come into a large courtyard where there were common areas like a pantry, a small kitchenette, a studying area, and then you have these small private alcoves. Um Even staff accommodation was inbuilt into these vadas. So it was a complete family atmosphere. Yeah, there would be not more than about 30 or 40 students staying in each of these vadas at one time, as earlier designed. Though now I think there are almost 100 plus students staying in each of the vadas. So this the design of the residential cluster also is equally important when we are doing an institute for residential stay. What we are going to do this time is not going to have a residential institute. We are just doing a sort of a school, which is a small school, but we can take care of all these activities whenever we are designing institutes. This is the language of the buildings there. This is along the axis. What you're looking at on the left is the entrance to the administration building. To your right would have been the Mahadwara where you would enter from. The language was simple. Uh, it's always to note that being simple is more difficult than being complicated. Being complicated, you can justify it as the design wants it. Being simple and regular creates a pattern, a vocabulary, which has to be adhered to. And that creates problems which we as architects have to solve. And that is the fun part of architecture also. So the language we created is the stone walls, random basalt stone walls, form finished bands of concrete, either in terms of lintels or in terms of beams, box windows at various different, depending on the function, and these small aesthetic. So there would be either spouts coming out, or walkways, or these form finished circular columns, enveloped courtyards. But look at the scale in all of this. The scale is very important. It's all up to the human scale. You are not entering into a triple height lobby, nor are you entering into spaces which have got atriums with polycarbonate domes or glass domes. You're entering into a space where the human will feel comfortable. The entrances are all essentially the sky is the roof, and you're entering always through a bed of green. There's always a courtyard or a plant or a sit out wherever you're doing it. The stone paving was always red agra, shabad, and inside the buildings was all kota stone. Nothing fancy in the flooring anywhere. Nothing fancy in the ceilings anywhere. They were all form finish exposed ceilings. So there were a lot of murals done, relief patterns, so as to speak. And that was what the fun was, to create life. To anyone who would come into the institute, maybe even daily or even once to visit it, would always find something different. There would be something which would sort of bring them back to uh, the basics, so to speak. This is another building. Now the angular walls and the stepping is more as paying a homage to the surrounding countryside. The hills, the sloping roofs echo the hills. And if you see, we've got a glass wall in one of the buildings that's in the art center, but the glass wall completely looks up to the north. So your painting, sculpture, pottery areas which are there behind it had natural daylight uh, all throughout the year and no direct glare. So it's just through subtle planning techniques that all these things were sort of worked out. Another integral aspect of the design were these spouts, rainwater spouts. There were rainwater pipes in many areas also, but these spouts were also there to give a third dimension to the elevation facade, as well as to work out. It was a folly spaces so that the water would sort of come down, help in collecting in some areas. There were these pits down at the bottom where there would be pebbles, and they would sort of water would just percolate into it. This was at a time when stormwater harvesting wasn't well known around, but the site and the detailing that we would do in most of the designs would ensure that all the water from the site is drained into the ground itself, and it would either percolate into the subsoil and help make the ground more fertile. Uh, this is one of the accesses where you come out from the academic areas going either to the dining block or to the library or to the art center. Again, the scale would start from 7 feet 6. Okay, that's another thing that I'd like to share with you. The beam bottoms were at 7 feet 6 inches. That was a very, I would say, a modular height, so as to speak, at that time. The beam facades were always 2 feet 6 inches, so you have 10 feet. The minimum height inside any room. The balconies were with inverted beams, which would ensure each balcony height would be 76 inches. So this modularity started in CDSA, which is the next project I'll show you. Then I'll take you into this. This is a student center. If you see the ceiling, it's a completely flat ceiling. There are these murals depicting various mythological creatures, various scenes from the surroundings. It just it was more fun. There's like a large snake eating whatever is coming the way. That was one of the murals there. With these form finished circular columns holding a completely flat ceiling slab. The water being drained out by spouts, and you have this glass which was reflective. The reflective glass had two issues with it. That one was it would not absorb direct sunlight, though the windows were very well recessed in many areas. But also they would reflect the mountainscape beyond. And the mountainscape is something which is very interesting. Students who are there in the Western Ghats would relate to it very easily. From June to October, they're vividly green. They are beautiful, soothing, completely lively with the rains. But the minute the rains go, they sort of age and they would sort of become brown. And from December to the months of May, they're completely barren. They're large, scraggy outcrops with great formations. And it's something which was always, they would have brilliant sunsets and sunrises. And something which you could sort of reflect on. That was one of the aims that when this was being done. Again, this is a student center from a different area. The skylights were there to give natural light to all the room besides those windows that you'd seen. And these skylights were either facing north or east, so that there was never direct glare from the south in any of these areas. This is the art center. If you see the glass wall on your left, though it is a complete glass wall, it is facing the north and it's completely in the shade. And you can see the topography of the land at the back. And why the site was that beautiful. And one thing is there, CCBA has always been blessed with beautiful sites. So it's one of the things we'll see when we design in Nilchi also. Nilchi is also very close to my heart. One of the first institutes I'd worked on, the Trinary Institute, was also based in Nilchi. Just the language again. The way entrances are, you get people in from wider areas, construct them, frame their views, and then explore both the landscape as well as the building onto them. This is the library building. It's got its own internal courtyard. So it derives its light completely from the courtyard. So it's complete diffuse light. There's no glare anywhere that you are in the library. This is the view of the library from inside. These are all simple forms. There's nothing extraordinary in it. There's no use of material. These are, in today's world also, they would be cheap buildings. At that time, they would have cost about 1,200 rupees. Today, they would be costing maybe double that amount. But it's just the form and the gesture to nature and to the function that sort of creates these timeless pieces of architecture. The next project I'm talking about is Center for Development Studies and Activities. This was a project done over 2 phases. It started in the 80s, and that's when the academic areas are done. And in the 90s, the residential areas were done. If you look at it, it is a precursor to what Mahindra College would be. Here there was one advantage. The architect and the client were the same. So Christopher was designing for himself. He was the chairman of CDSA, that is Center for Development Studies, and he still is a member on the board. His institute still runs. It's managed by his wife and his son till date. And It's something which I think each architecture student should visit it. There's provision to stay in it also now for architecture students. But visit it for its simplicity of form, its adherence to certain rules, and the way it sort of developed. It started off in the 80s when it was outside the limits of Pune city. So it was village farmland and uh, agricultural zone. And so that is when Christopher bought this land there. And now it is in the center of the city, though it's still an oasis of calm. And the academic areas were done on a very rigid system of 7 feet 6 inches spaces, 2 feet 6 inches for walls, or 1 feet 4 inches for walls, and then again repeating itself. And this grid was repeated not in the building plan, but in the building section, as well as in the flooring details. So it's a very simple grid modified to create these timeless beauties as we speak of. Even after I've been seeing this building for over 20 years, and each time I see it, it's a different way of uh, appreciating the building. And this was the building that had sort of got me interested in CCBA. When I was working in Bombay, there was a site of a client about half an hour from this place, and I used to travel past this building. And I was interested in who would do something like this, and that's how there was no internet at that time much to sort of Google and ask a question, who's the architect, or put a photo and find out. So I had to sort of find out from friends, colleagues, or magazines at that time were there. So okay, this architect based out of Pune, and I relocated from Mumbai to Pune just to work in that space, because I thought creating spaces for people is something which I would prefer doing than doing different types of say interiors or what the Mumbai market was demanding. So it was a very different approach which I had taken at that time, and I think I'm enjoying that. This is the space. This photograph is quite old. It's about maybe 15 years old, because currently the hills at the back are surrounded with buildings. So it looks as if it's more of an urban sprawl than idyllic settings of uh, the outskirts of Pune. If you see the buildings, they still follow the angles. The roofs still are. 22.5 is the steep angle, and then the shallow angle, and that was essentially that the south winds that would come would essentially just sort of get stopped, and water would drain over off easily. And the language is again the same: exposed stone walls, form finished concrete, large plazas. So on the left is a part of the residential campus with a, a first floor level, and there are these sculptures and kept either donated by artists or bought over a period of time and kept there. What you see here is one of the buildings. If you see in flooring, also if you see the design is the balcony slabs are 7 feet 6 inches bottom. The windows, if you see the windows, follow the same language. Sliding windows, 7 feet 6 inches is the main sliding panel, and then there's a fixed panel of 2 feet 6 inches, and then there's an again 7 feet 6 inches panel. So the beams are again 2 feet 6 inches. The height of the bottom of the beam is 7 feet 6 inches. So there's a very peculiar language which sort of repeats itself. But the hierarchy of spaces, the way the buildings are arranged, is something which I will not be able to explain clearly in this, but it's where someone has to go and visit once during his architectural career. It helps in forming a lot of ideas and a lot of, it answers a lot of questions when you see a building like this. Here, the articulation of the windows and the flooring is clear. The 7 feet 6 inches bay, then the fixed panel, which reflects itself in the flooring also, in the murals also, uh, in the ceiling also. Some of the murals in the ceiling of the building. Murals are more the fun elements. Uh, they are for giving a bit of relief to both the person who sort of comes to the campus or as to the architect also. It's his stamp on the building. This is Christopher's office in CDSA. I think the typewriter would sort of give away its timeline. It's not there's no iPad there, so you know that it is over 20 years old. The simplicity of the language, the simplicity of the design can be seen, and the clarity of the light. This is what we have to achieve in all the projects that we do, and I think we would be achieving this, or each one of us should hope to achieve this in the project that we are going to do right now. And all this can be imagined. There was no 3D software. There was no Rhino or any other animals to speak of, sort of, to help us aid in designing this. There was no computer aided design. There was only brain aided design. So it creates these spaces. We still have the capabilities, just that we have become more lazy and we outsource it to either the computer or a smartphone. YMCA International Campsite is not an institute, so to speak, but it's a project which is done in Nilchi. It's a site that you all are going to follow, and that's about just, in fact, the campsite would be 5 minutes from the site we've chosen for your project currently. YMC came to us with a very different proposition. They wanted a campsite where students in summer could sort of go and spend there a week or two and have training. And they had a very small budget. At that, in when they came in 2001, the budget was maybe a crore and a half. And I remember the year 2001 because the foundation stone was laid on the year 9/11 happened. So that is, we remember coming back from the foundation ceremony and then listening to the news. So it's settled on the hills, and it's a valley that sort of opens out onto a lake. And what we've created is these sort of cabins, which are underground, so to speak. We followed the contours of the land and we created them one below the other, uh, nestled into the hillside, and then sort of covered them with a vault and these earth mounds. So over a period of 5 years, they became completely integrated into the building. In fact, when the town planner had come to approve these buildings, she was like, "Why have you got me here? There's nothing to see. There's only one structure, and there's nothing I can give you all approval on." It was then that we told that no, there are these cabins which are all underground, and she was interested, and then sort of saw this entire space. Uh, the building that I'm going to show you first is the camp manager's bungalow. Um, you enter from it would be on the right side of the screen. The ground level when you enter is essentially the roof of the building. So when you enter, you don't see the building at all. You just see a narrow passage that sort of goes down into it's like a canyon, and then it comes out into this vast open space. And the skylights that you see on top, the form finish ones, are either for ventilation for the toilets, or they are bringing light into the other rooms of the camp manager's bungalow. So the site plan, if you see, is there are two parts. One is the right hand side where we've got the original phase one, and the left hand side is this building here is phase two, which was a multi-purpose hall which was added much later, because the final usage turned to students in summers, and it became a training institute for corporates, especially from Bombay and Pune, in the weekdays. And they wanted training halls. So earlier, the dining hall, which is number 4 in your screenshot, was looking at it, was becoming both a multi-purpose dining hall, a training institute, and there were different families enjoying the same time and corporate training happening. But then YMCA thought, we'll make a separate training hall, and that's how number 9 was created, almost 8 or 9 years later. Number 7 is the camp manager's bungalow, the one that I just showed you the photograph about. So there's this passage that you go into, And what you see from top is essentially just mounds of green, a few skylights, and the curved wall which is sunken below it. The interesting part of this is everything was done on site. The pathways that you see, the placement of the cabins, placement of the buildings. There was no way that you could sit in a studio and sort of say, okay, this building is going to come in this area. You had to go to site, explore the places, see where the best views were, and then go and say, okay, I'm going to put a building here. See the trees on the side, wrap your passages around it. It was all done on site, and then people would come back in the night to office, draft it out on paper, and say, okay, we've done something like this. But till today, I don't think anyone, either in our studio or in the contractors team, would know exactly how the passages move, the exact locations of the building, because they were all sort of uh, holistically placed as per the requirement, as per the views given in the site. So each of these cabins, number 5 and number 6 that you see, was sort of placed underground. Not underground, we had placed it on a lower contour and then filled it back up with earth. And you enter it through a sort of these steps. You step down one floor and you open it. So it's always a surprise. You enter the cabin and there's a huge lake right in front of you. So it's nestled on the contours of the site. Number 2 is where these plinths have been made, where tents can be set up by various schools or in professional institutes and outline that. And the cabins are more formal form of living. So this is how the landscape is. You enter these steps, you come up into these areas. The building is on your left and it is completely underground. The retaining wall on your right hand side, what you see is essentially what is doing walking down the pathway. So this is the multi-purpose hall that you're talking of. Again, simple languages. Just the scale of it, the simplicity of it is what makes a difference. There's Jaisalmer stone and Kota stone here. IPS in major areas in the campsite because there was a very heavy usage of people on those spaces. Now, this is a place where you all can call up Bombay YMCA and book it for a weekend, and you all can explore the beauty of nature as well as how the architecture of the space has created this wonder in a remote area. It was 40 kilometers from the highway, and there was no bus going to these areas. Either you had to have your own vehicle or trek down 3 kilometers from the nearest bus stop. And the first time we went there, the people were scared of seeing outsiders. That was in 2001. So it was a place way outside normal civilization. And we managed to get this large column-free coffered ceiling in the space. For these doors on your left completely open out. Either they open out onto the wall beer, and beyond that is the view to the lakes. So your facade is a completely collapsible facade. Okay, this is the dining hall come old training center. You can see the lake at the back. The trees and the plants again have been put up by either the architects or the institute YMCA over a period of time, and they sort of covered up the entire hillside. Otherwise, Western Ghats are notorious for being barren for 9 months of the year. We were not allowed to build any RCC roof structure, so that's why this tensile structure was done. We were told that the life of this would be not more than 10 years, but it's now 15 years that we've been using this tensile structure. And it was one of the first tensile structures that was done in a way that there's no column in it. The column that you see in the center part of it doesn't hang on the ground. It's suspended in the from wires. This is Christopher Benninger. You can visit either our Facebook page or a website for all further details of our works. What I've given you is a brief of what our works would be, what type of institutes we would be looking at, what type of institutes we've designed. There are lots of stories behind all of these, and they'll come out over a period of time once we start looking at it. What we are doing for is essentially we want to enjoy this process of learning.